The morning my mother-in-law invited me to the bank, I didn't sense danger. If anything, I felt oddly proud. For years, I had tried to earn her approval through patience, obedience, and silence. So when she smiled at me across the breakfast table and said, "Come with me today, I need your help," it felt like a small victory. Her smile was neat and controlled, lips curved perfectly, eyes sharp and unreadable. I told myself I was imagining things. I always did. The ride to the bank was quiet, except for the hum of traffic. She talked about trivial things, weather, neighbors, how family must stick together. I nodded, staring out the window, unaware that every word was rehearsed. I didn't know yet that this was not a request but a trap dressed as kindness. The bank stood tall and cold, all glass and steel. As we walked in, her hand slipped around my arm, possessive and firm. To anyone watching, we looked close. Affectionate, like a daughter and a mother sharing secrets, but her grip tightened just enough to remind me who was in control. "We just need to update some paperwork," she said again sweetly. "It won't take long." Routine. That word echoed in my head as we approached the counter. The teller looked young, early 20s maybe, with tired eyes and neatly tied hair. She greeted us with a polite smile, but the moment my mother-in-law slid the documents across the counter, something changed. The teller's fingers paused mid-motion. Her eyes scanned the papers once, twice, then lifted slowly to my face. Her smile faltered. It wasn't curiosity or confusion I saw there. It was fear. My stomach tightened. "Is everything okay?" I asked gently, unsure why my voice felt strained. "Yes, yes," the teller replied quickly, too quickly. She typed something into her computer, but her hands trembled. She kept glancing at the screen, then at me, like she was watching a storm approach. My mother-in-law leaned forward, still smiling. "She's my daughter-in-law," she said smoothly. "We're here together." Something in the way she said together made my skin crawl. The teller swallowed hard, of course, she murmured. As the minutes passed, an uneasy silence settled over us. I noticed details I hadn't before. The way my mother-in-law avoided looking directly at the screen, the way she answered questions before they were even asked, the way my name appeared printed on documents I didn't remember signing. A chill slid down my spine. I wanted to ask questions, but years of conditioning kept my mouth shut. Don't embarrass the family, don't cause trouble, don't be dramatic. Still, I felt it, that instinct women learn to ignore until it's too late. Something was wrong. The teller stood suddenly. "I just need to check something in the back," she said, her voice unsteady. As she turned away, her shoulder brushed mine. For a split second, she leaned close, so close I could smell her perfume. Her whisper was barely audible. "Please," she said, breathless, "pay attention." My heart skipped. She walked away before I could respond, leaving me frozen beside my mother-in-law, whose smile never faltered. "People these days," she muttered, tapping her manicured nails on the counter. "So unprofessional." I forced a nod, but my pulse roared in my ears. I didn't know what was coming yet. I didn't know my life was already being rearranged without my consent. But I knew one thing with terrifying certainty: that smile beside me, it didn't belong to someone who loved me. The teller returned with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. She sat down slowly, as if the chair itself might betray her, and resumed typing. The clicking of the keyboard echoed too loudly in the quiet bank, each sound striking my nerves like a countdown. My mother-in-law hummed softly, relaxed, confident. She had the posture of someone who believed the ending was already written. I watched the screen reflected faintly in the teller's glasses. Numbers, my name, account details I had never authorized. My chest tightened, but I said nothing. Years of swallowing discomfort had trained me well. "Everything looks fine," the teller said aloud, though her voice shook. Just a few confirmations. She slid one paper forward, stopping it directly in front of me. Sign here. I stared at the signature line. My name was printed beneath it in bold, final letters. My hand hovered above the pen, suddenly heavy, like it didn't belong to me anymore. What exactly is this? I asked, trying to sound calm. My mother-in-law answered instantly. Just a formality, she said, waving a dismissive hand. It allows me to manage things more easily. You trust me, don't you? The question wasn't really a question. It was a test. I hesitated. The teller cleared her throat. Ma'am, she said to my mother-in-law, I just need to verify something with her privately. The air went cold. My mother-in-law's eyes snapped to the teller, sharp and warning. That won't be necessary. We're family. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the teller nodded stiffly. Of course, she said. She stood again, this time holding a folder. I'll just make a copy. As she passed behind the counter, she glanced at me, really looked at me, and in that look was urgency so raw it stole my breath. When she came back, she placed the folder down, leaned forward as if to point something out, and whispered, Do not sign. My heart slammed. She pretended to flip pages, her voice low and shaking. This account links you to debt that isn't yours. Fraud investigations are already flagged. If you stay, it becomes your responsibility. My mouth went dry. What? I breathed. She swallowed. She's done this before, she said quickly. Different names, same pattern. I felt dizzy. Before I could respond, the teller straightened, her professional mask snapping back into place just as my mother-in-law turned toward us. Is there a problem? She asked pleasantly. No problem at all, the teller replied, too smoothly. But as my mother-in-law gathered her purse, the teller leaned closer one last time, her voice barely more than air. When I turned around, she whispered, Run. The word echoed in my head like an alarm. Run. I looked at my mother-in-law, at the woman who had cooked meals for me, smiled at family gatherings, called me daughter. Her eyes were calculating now, impatient, watching my pen. In that moment, the truth hit me with brutal clarity. This wasn't help. This wasn't family. This was a setup. My hands began to shake. Panic surged, but I forced myself to breathe. I couldn't confront her. Not here, not now. I needed an exit. I don't feel well, I said suddenly, clutching my stomach. I think something's wrong. My mother-in-law frowned. Now, don't be ridiculous. I'm dizzy, I added, standing too fast. The room spun, half real, half terror. I need the restroom. The teller reacted instantly, of course, she said, raising her voice, down the hall to the left. My mother-in-law sighed loudly, annoyed. Fine, hurry up. I nodded, pretending to steady myself, and turned away. With each step, my fear sharpened into resolve. I wasn't imagining things anymore. I wasn't overreacting. I was walking away from a betrayal that had been planned long before I ever stepped into that bank. And I had no intention of coming back. The moment I turned the corner toward the hallway, my legs nearly gave out. My breath came in short, uneven bursts, and my heart pounded so violently I thought it might give me away. I forced myself to slow down, to look like a sick woman instead of a hunted one. Anyone watching the cameras would see only weakness. They wouldn't see terror. The restroom door was only a few steps ahead, but I didn't go inside. Instead, I leaned against the wall, one hand pressed to my mouth, counting silently. 1, 2, 3, the teller's words replayed in my head like a siren. Run. I waited until I heard my mother-in-law's sharp voice drift from the counter. She was complaining now about inefficiency, about wasted time. Her confidence told me she believed I'd come back. She always believed that. I straightened, wiped my eyes, and walked past the restroom. Then I ran, not wildly, not screaming, just fast enough to look purposeful, like someone late for something urgent. The exit sign glowed at the end of the hallway like salvation. Each step felt unreal, like my body had separated from my mind and taken control. The glass doors whooshed open, and sunlight spilled over me. Fresh air hit my lungs, and only then did I realize how little I'd been breathing. I didn't stop. I crossed the street, ignored the honk of a car, and ducked into a small cafe 2 blocks away. My hands shook so badly, I spilled water all over the table when I sat down. The barista asked if I was okay. I nodded, unable to speak. After a few minutes, my phone buzzed. "Mill, where are you?" I stared at the screen, my chest tight. I didn't answer. Another message followed. "Mill, don't make a scene. Come back now." That was when the reality sank in. She wasn't worried. She was angry. I turned my phone face down and finally let myself cry quiet, shaking sobs that came from somewhere deep and old. I cried for the trust I'd given so freely, for the warnings I'd ignored, for the version of myself that believed love meant endurance. When I calmed enough to think, I called my husband. My voice cracked as I told him everything. The documents, the teller, the warning, the escape. Silence stretched on the line. Then he said, softly, "She asked me not to come today." That sentence hurt more than anything else. I went home that night, not to her house, but to a friend's. I locked the door, pulled the curtains, and slept with the lights on like a child afraid of the dark. In the morning, fear gave way to clarity. I requested copies of my credit report. I contacted the bank anonymously. I wrote down every interaction I'd ever had with her that suddenly made sense, the financial favors, the strange questions, the pressure to sign things without reading. Patterns emerged where confusion once lived. 2 days later, the teller called me from a blocked number. Her voice was steady now. She told me the bank had opened an internal investigation. My name had been flagged just in time. "You were lucky," she said. "Most people aren't lucky." I didn't feel lucky. I felt awake. My mother-in-law called repeatedly. Left voicemails dripping with false concern that slowly turned sharp. "You embarrassed me. You're overreacting. Family doesn't act like this." I didn't respond. Because somewhere between that fake illness and that open door, something in me had shifted. I had run not just from a bank, but from a future where my life was signed away without my consent. And I was never going back. For the first time in my life, I did nothing publicly. No accusations. No dramatic confrontations. I let the silence stretch, because silence, I learned, makes guilty people reckless. My mother-in-law filled that silence quickly. Her messages shifted from sharp to sweet, from demanding to desperate. "Let's talk like adults. You misunderstood everything. I only wanted to help you." Each voicemail was carefully crafted, meant to sound reasonable to anyone else who might hear it. I saved them all. While she talked, I worked. I met with a lawyer quietly. I gave statements to the bank's fraud department. I pulled records going back years, documents she had asked me to sign, accounts she had managed, for relatives who were no longer speaking to her. The story that emerged was slow and ugly, like mold revealed when walls are torn down. She had used family as shields, trust as a weapon, love as leverage. The bank investigation widened. What began with my name uncovered others, distant cousins, elderly acquaintances, even a former neighbor. Different people, same method. She always chose those who were polite, patient, unwilling to say no. I realized then why she had chosen me. Patience, when abused, looks like permission. Weeks later, she finally confronted me in person. She appeared at my friend's house unannounced, dressed impeccably, hair perfect. She smiled when I opened the door, but her eyes were frantic. "You've caused a lot of trouble," she said calmly. I stepped aside and let her see the man sitting at the table behind me, my lawyer. Her smile cracked. "You tried to ruin me," she hissed once she understood. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I simply slid my phone across the table and pressed play. Her own words filled the room, manipulative, threatening, careless. The mask she wore so well had recorded itself. She went very still. "You should have come back to the bank," she said quietly. "And you should have never underestimated me," I replied. The consequences came slowly, then all at once. Her accounts were frozen pending investigation. Family members who had once defended her began asking questions, then distancing themselves. Invitations stopped, phone calls went unanswered. The woman who ruled every room now sat alone in hers. She tried to paint herself as the victim. She always did, but this time the evidence spoke louder than her charm. I never testified in court. I didn't need to. The paper trail was enough. Her name became something people whispered instead of praised. The last time I saw her was at a family gathering months later. She stood on one side of the room, stiff and small, while conversations flowed easily around me. When our eyes met, there was no anger in hers, only disbelief. She had planned my downfall carefully. She hadn't planned for my escape. I didn't smile to mock her. I smiled because I was free, free from fear, free from obedience disguised as love, free from the version of myself that thought endurance was virtue. Revenge, I learned, doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's simply living a life untouched by the harm someone intended for you. I walked out of that gathering lighter than I had ever felt, because the sweetest revenge wasn't what she lost. It was what I finally gained.